Cowabunga dudes, it's time for us to talk some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Let's get to the video. Hello, it's George from Australia and welcome to Gaming My Whole Life, where I discuss everything video game related, from good old past pixels to the birth of 3D. Until now, welcome to my humble smexy Australian gaming channel. Ladies and gentlemen, we have quite the exciting video today. I was provided a review key for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection that came out on PC, that came out on a bunch of consoles. Basically, this collection has 12 different Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, ranging from the original Game Boy from Nintendo, to the original Nintendo, to the Super Nintendo, to the Sega Mega Drive, and also to the arcades. So I got my review copy. Thank you Konami for sending that out to me. And also, if you do end up enjoying this video and you're like, hey, I was thinking about getting this game collection and now I'm going to get it, I'll have it linked below for you. If you're going to get the game, please use my link, just because that then sends a signal to Konami that, hey, I helped them get some sales. Only if you're interested, and after I give my honest review, even though I'm stoked that they approved my CD key, I'm not going to lie. If I didn't like something, I will say it. I like to be honest, but there is a lot to talk about here, and more specifically, who this specifically is for. At first, it may appear that this is just a collection of old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, and you know what? Well, that's accurate. What you may not be aware of is the amount of extra things you get for the hardcore Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan of old. And I'll give you some examples, right? And soon we'll talk about the games, I promise. But let me tell you about some of the unexpected extras that you actually get as part of this package, right? So you get it, you open it up, you have your game selection, but you also have your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sewer section. And when you go there, it's as if you've walked into an ultra old school TMT fan's bedroom, right? And they literally have all the original game covers, random posters, original game reviews, manuals, and booklets and so forth. Posters of every single animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series that has ever come out from the original to current, right? Like, it's just filled, character bios. It's just like a super fan room exists in this game. It's literally an area where you can just look through all the historical relevance of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game. They even have a section where they show all the places where they advertised in magazines and so forth, right? All the pop culture references. It's actually quite surprising how much they have there just for that person who wants to go that extra mile. You enjoyed, you're enjoying one of the games. Cool. Look at the original book that came with it, with the original artwork and so forth. Want to know more about the behind the scenes sort of things? They have that documented in the game as well. Remember an old, really cool Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles poster you found in a magazine that one time? It's probably in the freaking game. That's what I mean. It has the soundtracks. There's a lot more here than you'd expect, but at the end of the day, it does come down to the games, so let's talk about the games. Now, these games are obviously ports, right, from the original counterparts. How much of a good job have they done with the ports? Well, I haven't experienced any actual technical issues. They play just like the way you remember them, plus there has been some quality of life improvement. So for example, you can now save at any time. You don't need to wait until a save point. You don't need to write down a password or something to put into later. Literally anytime, pop it up, save your progress. There is also a handy rewind feature, right? Which is really good because you may remember when you were little that you thought the TMNT games were hard. They are hard. It's not your memory. It's not the fact that you were probably like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old when this game came out. No, they were hard games. So being able to save anywhere, being able to rewind anytime is awesome. Also, they let you add filters before you start playing the game. So if you just wanted to fill up your screen in all the modern glory as far as pixels go, you can do that. All good. You want to keep the original ratio, you can do that. You want to put a CRT TV filter, you want to put a monitor filter, and some others. You can go through it. There's normally 3 to 4 filters with each game that you can play around with to get the game to look exactly how you want. Now, the types of games you get are basically, for the most part, every single Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game is a beat 'em up, right? So ideally, if you can play this game with a friend, maybe someone who, you know, grew up in the same era as you, or someone who simply likes beat 'em up games, then you can have the joy and the privilege of literally starting from the Nintendo, going to the Super Nintendo, playing some of the Game Boy games, playing the arcade versions. I think that's very cool, because if you grew up during that era, you know, the 80s and the 90s, you know that the arcade, everything sounded and looked better. And of course, arcade games were just one of those luxuries which either you had $1 from your parents to play for 5 minutes before you lost, or that was it. You never got the console version. However, now you can play the arcade versions. Not only that, but there's also inbuilt cheats that you can activate before you play. So before you go into every single game, firstly shows you a little icon on the bottom left hand corner, you know, where the game is from. I think from a UI perspective, I think that's great. I love the fact that I can go to a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, right? Have a look in the bottom left hand corner. I'm like, oh yeah, this was a Game Boy game, this was a Nintendo game, this was a Super Nintendo game, this was a Sega Mega Drive game, this was an arcade game. I love that we can do that. But also, before going in there, if you press the select button, it sort of has, each game has its own cheats that you can activate. So for example, you can have unlimited lives, you can have extra lives, you can turn friendly fire on and off. And in some of the fighting games, it actually lets you unlock bosses. So, you know, in fighting games, normally you'd have your selectable characters, and then you would have the boss characters, which you just accepted at the time, right? That you never got to play the boss characters, though that's just how it was. Well, in a lot of these fighting games, it actually lets you unlock the boss characters, which I think is actually pretty cool. Another thing which I really like is you get to see the evolution of pixel graphics, to be honest, and how far they come. Like, you played the original Game Boy games, right? You're like, wow, this is really simple, right? And Game Boy games were, you know, quite simple. That being said, it is nice to be able to play a Game Boy game finally on a backlit screen. Because those of you who didn't know, maybe you weren't old enough, or maybe you didn't have enough money to get a Game Boy game back in the day, there was no backlight, so you had to use, like, the screen didn't glow at all. So if there was darkness, you couldn't see anything. So it's nice to be able to play it, you know, on my big monitor screen. That's all nice. You can even play a handful of them online. So I'm going to look away here so I can tell you the correct titles. So the games that you can play online is TMT Arcade, TMT Turtles in Time Arcade, TMT The Hyperstone Heist, and TMT Tournament Fighters, right? So these 4 titles you can play online. The others you cannot. So, is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the Cowabunga collection? Is it for you? Well, I'm going to be frank with you, right? If you're a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you're a fan of these older style games, you have a general interest, you're curious, you like the idea of generally sitting down with like the worst games and slowly building yourself up to the best ones, experiencing every single different version, analyzing the different graphics and the different effects, and like, oh yeah, this version had this and it was really cool, but then the next version they didn't have that, but they added this and that. You have a friend you can play with, you can enjoy it, you're really nostalgic for that extra, you know, fan stuff that I've mentioned as well, then cool. Like, I think this is actually really good. 12 games, they have it listed as 13, but technically the 13th game is a double up, right? Because you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time game, right? You have the Super Nintendo version and you have the arcade version, right? So they've listed it as 13, it's actually 12. That being said, if you were not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan, if you were not nostalgic at all, and if you were not that much of a 2D beat 'em up fan, this isn't going to do anything for you. You know, in your eyes, this is going to seem, you know, really dated. The product obviously isn't for you, but I think Konami understands, right? I think they understand who their fans are. Like, that's why you have all that extra retro stuff. That's why you have all that behind the scenes stuff, you know, and the sound tapes and this and that, and all the extra art. Like, there's just so much random things, right? This is obviously for the fans, right? And it is a great modern collection. You know, it's all these games, even the Game Boy games. That was actually surprising. And to be honest, I enjoyed the Game Boy games a lot more than I would have expected, you know? Like, you laugh at the graphics because it's the Game Boy, it's the best it can do, but there is definitely some fun to be had here. The fighting games, which are like, you know, Street Fighter knockoffs and all that, much better than you'd expect as well. It's a awesome bundle for fans, but it is boring if you're not. Those of you who are beat 'em up fans though, you're going to have an amazing time. Like, if you sit there with a friend and you're like, right, bro, what's the female version of bro? Broseph, Broman, best buddy who happens to be a female. If we start from the beginning and we play every single game, we go on a mission, we are going to clock, we are going to compete, we are going to complete every Nintendo version, every Super Nintendo version, every Game Boy version, every arcade version from start to finish, you have a buttload of hours to go through. And you're going to have a great time. Cowabunga, dude. Anyways, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with me. You have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you all live on this big blue planet of ours. God bless you all. Take care. See you all for the next video here at Gaming My Whole Life. All right. Bye-bye.